Chapter 4. The Selection. When King Henry of Naremia finished evaluating the girls, he went up on the platform and sat down on the throne next to his son. "You have been chosen for the selection, which is a great honor," the king began. He had a loud voice, so the sound even carried to where I was standing. I was actually curious to find out why this was such a privilege. The greatest honor there was in Mysaulia was to either be a hunter or to fight in the Royal Warrior Division. What could possibly be so important in Naremia? Of course, they had their own army, but I didn't think that was the reason the girls were here. "In the coming weeks, you'll follow classes and be evaluated during them. You'll learn about the royal life and how to be elegant. You'll learn about the etiquette and be educated on manners and how to speak properly," the king continued. Well, that would be easy. I was a royal. I was a freaking crown prince of Mysaulia. I was the heir to the throne, and one day I would become queen. I'd learned all of this already. I didn't need these lessons. I would probably pass after a day. "Perform well in those classes, and you'll make sure you won't be eliminated at the end of each week. The last remaining girl will become the bride of the crown prince." What? I almost lost it. This was hilarious. Apparently, the highest honor in Naremia was to become a princess to one day maybe become queen. Really? And they even had a competition between a few selected girls to win the heart and the hand of the prince? Was this seriously a thing? This was such a cliche and so old-fashioned. And then I had been forced to participate in this too. I wasn't just any Mysalian hunter. I was a future queen. The king and his son had no clue what they had gotten themselves into. "Go now and take the envelope with your name when you leave this room," the king concluded. The girls headed outside and picked up an envelope from the basket next to the door. "Let's just wait until they all have an envelope. Then you can take the one from the girl who's missing," Sabine said to me. I nodded in answer. The king looked at me and narrowed his eyes. He signed for me to come towards him, and I obeyed. "Why are you still hanging around here?" he asked. "Your son has asked me to replace the missing girl, Your Majesty. I'm not really sure it's a good idea to let a Mysalian hunter participate in the selection, but if that's necessary before we can talk, I will prove I have basic manners." I answered simply. The king sighed deeply and waved his hand to send me away. I turned around and went to the basket to pick up the last remaining envelope. All the other girls had already left the room. The name on the envelope was Maggie Bond. I showed it to Sabine, who had come to stand next to me in the meantime. "Luckily, Miss Bond was also human. Her room is in the same wing as the other human girls. I'll lead you there." I wondered how she knew Maggie Bond was human, but that wasn't really important. "What about my servant Carl? Will he be able to stay with me?" I asked Sabine. "Of course. A few other girls have also brought their own servants or maids." Only hybrids were part of the elite class in Naremia, and a lot of hybrids were still commoners here. I didn't think any of the human girls had brought their own maids or servants. "What about the dress code? I packed some dresses, but they are mostly pretty simple." "Some girls who are part of the palace staff will come to take your measurements later today. They will make you some dresses." I also haven't had lunch yet. It was a long journey from Mysaulia to the Naremian palace. Sabine sighed. She was getting pretty tired of my questions. But I had gotten a pretty shitty welcome and had then been thrown into the selection just like that. I was only trying to get some information. I will let a maid bring some food to your room. I decided to keep quiet after that. I didn't want to annoy her any further. As we passed through the entrance hall, I signaled for Carl to follow. He immediately picked up my suitcase and walked behind me. Sabine led us to a wing in the far back of the palace. We arrived in a huge sitting area. There was a lot of space with a lot of chairs and couches made of fabric. At the back of the space was a long hallway with doors. Sabine pointed towards it. Miss Bond's room is somewhere there. Her name is on the door. After she said that, she turned around and left. I walked down the hallway. Most doors were closed and didn't have names on them, but there were a few open doors with a name on them, and there was a girl in each of them. One girl with long, light brown hair noticed me. Hey, aren't you the diplomat from Mysaulia? She asked. I nodded slowly. She was right about that, but I wasn't entirely sure if confirming it was a good idea. Another girl also looked at me now. This girl had short, black, curly hair. Damn, then she's a hunter. You're participating in the selection, right? I asked. They both nodded in answer. Well, I'm not sure how I've gotten into this, but it looks like I need to participate in it as well. I swear I won't compete to steal the prince away from you. I just want to do my job. I would really appreciate your help, I said. The brown-haired girl jumped off her bed and came to me. She was of average height and therefore reached halfway to my face. I was quite tall for a girl. I don't even want to marry that prince, but sure, I'll try to help you. I'm Stephanie. She introduced herself to me. The black-haired girl still didn't really trust the situation or me. She hesitantly kept her distance. Look, I'm not a threat to you. Hunters don't harm humans, and I'm not even here to kill any hybrids, I told her. She finally stood up as well and came towards me. I'm Lillian. What's your name, and who is that? She pointed towards Carl, who was right behind me. I quickly glanced at him over my shoulder, but his expression was blank. He had received warrior training and was a guard, so he was used to having a neutral expression and not displaying any emotion. My name is Marion, and that is my servant Carl. He will assist and protect me during my stay in Neremia. So, what kind of help do you need? Stephanie asked. I just want to gain some information. What kind of classes will there be held? How long will the selection last? The two girls told me about the different classes and that my envelope held the schedule. They also told me 5 girls would be eliminated each week, which meant they could return home again. That would continue until 5 girls were left. When that was the case, only 2 girls would be eliminated at the end of that week. The remaining 3 girls would then have to go through the final week, and at the end of that week, 1 girl would be chosen to become the bride of the prince. Thank you for the information. There was a girl missing. Her name is Maggie Bond. Do you know where her room is? I saw that name on a door just a bit farther down, Stephanie answered, and she pointed farther along the hallway. Why do you need to know that? Lillian asked suspiciously. I'll be replacing her, so I'll be staying in the room that was meant for her. Oh, I'm sorry. I've just heard so many stories about the hunters. That's okay, Lillian. Well, I'll go to my room now. I went further down the hallway until I arrived at the door with Maggie's name on it. Here it is. The door was closed, so I opened it and entered. There was a huge bed in the middle of the room and a comfortable chair made of fabric and a wooden table next to it. There was also a big closet with a beautiful design on the left side of the room next to a door, which led to the bathroom. The left side was obviously meant for me because the right side didn't take up that much space. On that side there was just a small bed and a small, simple closet. That side was meant for a personal servant or maid. In my Saulia, they normally stayed in the room right next to the person they served, but apparently that wasn't the case in Neremia. I didn't really mind sharing the room with Carl. I actually felt safer with him being so close. Just put the suitcase somewhere in the room, Carl, I told him. He did what I had asked and went around the room to inspect the space. I don't think you need to do that, Carl. This room wasn't originally meant for me, and I doubt they would harm an innocent Neremian citizen. It's protocol, madam, he replied. I knew he had to follow the protocol, but this inspection was actually unnecessary. Don't use that title. I'm sorry, Miss Peralt. It's just a habit. One that will get us both into trouble, I stated. He didn't react to that. He didn't need to. He continued his inspection while I sat down on the chair and opened the envelope. I studied the schedule of classes. Stephanie and Lillian had named all of them, but the names of the classes spoke for themselves. It was quite obvious what manners or dancing would be about. Carl had finished his inspection and looked at me. Is there something wrong, Carl? I asked him. Can I ask what has happened, Miss Peralt? I've just arrived in Neremia at the worst possible time. It's not really my lucky day today. But don't worry about it. I'll fix it. You packed some clothes as well. You should go get them. Are you sure? It was actually risky to ask that because I could think he was doubting me in my competence. But I knew he only asked for my explicit confirmation, so he knew for certain he could leave me alone for a bit. Yes, I'm good. Thank you. He slightly bowed his head, turned around, and left me alone in the room. I sighed. In my head, I went over everything that had gone wrong today. Luckily, the rest of the day passed without any more incidents. Carl got back with his bag and unpacked both of our stuff. While he was unpacking, a maid brought a plate with some food to my room. I wasn't sure it was only meant for me, but I shared the food with Carl nonetheless. It wasn't standard, but I didn't care about those stupid rules right now. He was also hungry because, just like me, he hadn't eaten anything since breakfast. I'd rather starve myself before I let any Mysalian citizen suffer from hunger. I took care of my people. I always would. I know that wasn't standard, so thank you for not saying anything about it. I'll make sure to ask where you need to eat. Thank you, Miss Peralt, Carl said, and then continued unpacking. I smiled a bit towards him. I might be the Ice Queen, but I wasn't that cold or bitchy. I actually cared about my people and my country. I was only cold as a warrior, and I sometimes pretended to be bitchier because I hated the press. The press just didn't like me, but I didn't care about that. I didn't like them either. If they did like me, they would just call me Princess Madison. Where should my servant go to eat? I asked the maid when she came back to take away the plate. Oh, he can always come to the servant quarters. I can show you where they are. Please go with her, Carl, I ordered Carl. He immediately stopped unpacking, got up, and followed the girl outside. While they were gone, two other maids entered my room. They were here to take my measurements. I was hoping I would be free after this. I was just done with this day. I was also pretty tired. Luckily, the day was pretty much over. Everyone left me alone for the rest of the time. Only Lillian and Stephanie came to search for me when it was dinner time. I'd put on a simple dark purple dress, reaching right past my knees. The other girls were still wearing the same dresses as earlier, so I fit in more now. It was silent during dinner, and the atmosphere also felt uncomfortable. The hybrid girls sat with us at the table, staring at me like I would kill them out of the blue. I didn't have the energy to try to convince them I wouldn't. I actually enjoyed the silence. After dinner, I followed Lillian and Stephanie back to our wing and went straight to my room without saying anything. They were talking about the classes of the next day, but I knew more or less what would be taught. It had been a while since I had had such classes, but I still remembered them, and I also practiced almost daily what I had learned then. I entered my room, changed into my sleeping wear, and went straight into my bed. Carl wasn't around. I guessed he had gone to the servant quarters for dinner. I didn't really care about his whereabouts. We generally weren't that strict with our personnel in Mysalia. When Carl came back, he thought I was already sleeping because he tried to stay quiet. I was trying to sleep, but I couldn't yet. Since nobody had talked to me during dinner and had feared me, I wondered if the press was right. Maybe I was an ice-cold bitch. But then again, I wouldn't be so insecure and doubting myself now. I had also been friendly to Stephanie and Lillian, but they were just human girls, and they hadn't done anything wrong. They had nothing to do with me getting into the selection. Am I really that bad, Carl? I decided to ask Carl when he was also in his bed. I must have surprised him because he didn't answer immediately. I was just wondering what he thought of me. I had quite the reputation, and my nickname spoke for itself. Oh, what exactly do you mean, Miss Perrault? Am I that cold, hard, and emotionless? Sometimes, but only when it's necessary. Thank you for your honesty, Carl. Of course, Miss Perrault. I was finally able to sleep now. I dozed off quickly.